Okay, now look, I'll say it here and I'll say it now. I've never played any of the DeadSpace games. I was always one of those kids that grew up in a household where violent games were considered unholy and a corruption of the human mind. I think the most violent game I played as a kid was Wallace and Gromit Project Zoo, and even that game was considered too much for me because of its deadly array of weapons it had. But now that I am a big boy and can properly tie my own shoes, I bought DeadSpace and played it. I loved it. Everything from its Cronenberg-looking necromorphs to its iconic plasma cutter was just a thrill to experience. But do you know what wasn't a thrill to experience? This brain-dead challenge I decided to give myself. I decided to not only play in impossible mode, but to also not upgrade anything. So no suit upgrades or weapon upgrades in this run. I then added a one gun challenge and decided to only use the plasma cutter and stasis, but because you can't really hurt them using stasis. And as if all of this wasn't already tough enough to do, I decided to really spice up this cock and ball torture and prevent myself from buying ammo or health. That's right, you heard it. I will not be using the store in this game. I will have to rely purely on enemies I kill and the loot I find in this game to get ammo and health. So now the question stands, can I beat DeadSpace in impossible mode without upgrading, without using the store, and with only using the plasma cutter as my weapon? Well, grab your nearest bottle of ibuprofen and let's find out. The game starts by introducing us to our three main characters. We got the Binding of Isaac sitting right down on his throne. We got John Hammond to the right and Jack Daniels to the left. These three are headed to the Ishimura. Oh, and there's also the pilot, but he can't drive well, so we actually end up crash landing into the thing we were sent to fix. While reading the damage reports, we get introduced to our first necromorph. After witnessing the life of my comrade get taken right before my eyes, I realized that I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I picked up my plasma cutter and was ready to f*** up some necromorphs. I emptied an entire clip into this man and he did not die. In impossible mode, these necromorphs have become bullet sponges, and my inability to buy ammo will come back to haunt me later down the road. I met up with my squad and was assigned to go fix the tram systems, because no one else in this game can do anything other than give Isaac commands. On my way there, I manifested a plan in my head to try and save as much ammo as I can. I shot both this man's kneecaps and tried to stomp him out New York style, only to end up as a bilateral amputee. I picked up probably the most useful and important item in the game, the stasis thingy. Stasis allowed me to fix the tram system, but what it couldn't do was help me get past this onslaught of enemies I had to deal with. These enemies are your basic normal enemies, and each one of them felt like some sort of bloodborne boss. I knew that if I wanted to somehow beat this challenge, I had to get just a bit creative. I can't just shoot my way out of every situation. Ammo conservation and perfect aim was key to ending this challenge. Now, after multiple dismemberments later, I made my way to Hammond and Daniels and called them the tram. I made my way back up to the Kellyan and was ready to leave this so-called planet cracker, only to have a leaper ruin my plans and make me understand that I am sadly stuck on this vessel for another 11 chapters. With no other way to go, I took the tram and ended chapter 1. Upon arrival, I met this very nice lady who handed me the ability to telekinetically move objects wherever I wanted. Now I had to get to the morgue to get some access codes, but sadly the workers must have been so frightened by my presence that they decided to barricade my only way there. Now I would have used the telekinesis to move the stuff out of the way, but I decided that would be a little bit too messy. So instead, I went and searched for materials to craft a bomb and blow the f*** out of the barricade. On my way to one of the parts, I made it to a worker who thought he could scare me by letting his head get decapitated. It's a shame that he failed to realize that this prank did not work on me. I picked up the thermite and was on my way to get a shock pad. I seemed to never learn from my mistakes and attempted to actually stomp out one of these leapers. I of course died horribly. Obtaining the shock pad wasn't too bad, and I even helped this poor man get rid of an itch he had on his leg. Running back to the barricade, I decided that in order to save ammo, I would shoot an enemy once to stun him, and if I can, just try to run past them. With the barricade now destroyed, I made it to the morgue where a necromorph made my head roll away from my body. A few stomps and bullets later, I made it to the new enemies of the game, the Enhanced Slasher and the Infector. These two enemies single-handedly taught me what it's like to be on the receiving end of a punching bag. The amount of ammo it takes to kill just one Enhanced Slasher is awful. And add in the fact that the Infector is also a bullet sponge, I mean this just made for one hell of an area. On top of that, I also came into this part with not that much ammo, so perfect aim was a complete necessity. I decided to try and use my telekinesis to help me out, but it was futile. Nothing in this room helped me for shit. I decided my main priority was to take out the Infector first before he actually makes the second Enhanced Slasher. So after stunning and shooting, I did it. I retrieved the access codes only to find out that now the ship's engines were offline. And of course, it was my job to go ahead and find out what happened. I made it back safely to the tram where Chapter 3 awaited for my arrival. In Chapter 3, it was time to bring out my old mechanic degree in order to help me fix the spacecraft's engine. My journey to turn on both the first and second engine was actually not that bad. The game provided me with a generous amount of ammo for a gun I was not able to use, and I also got split in two by many necromorphs. But after fixing the engines, it was now time to get the gravity centrifuge online in order to prevent this vessel from plummeting into the planet with the hole in it. I checked my ammo count and was very happy with what I had. While in the centrifuge, my dumbass took a while to realize that I had to slow down the little rotating part first in order to actually get it to insert into the big machine. After removing the oxygen from the room, I had to make it out of the room while also avoiding leapers and the big spinny thing. It was actually a lot easier than it sounds. This game got a little too erotic for me when a huge tentacle shot out of nowhere and wanted to make sweet, sweet love to me. I didn't give it my consent, so I let it down easy by shooting the hell out of it and killing it. The best parts about this run was finding those rooms that have a lot of loot in them. Words truly cannot explain the sensation of euphoria you feel when coming across these rooms. Anyways, I eventually made it to the ignition room, where you guessed it, I could ignite the engine in this room. This led to a nice little lockdown sequence where I had to face off against a good amount of necromorphs. I got introduced to those pregnant ones who I had to be very careful with, because if she releases her little weird flesh babies, then it's quite a problem, since in impossible mode, they will most likely kill you if they latch onto you. Luckily, this room had explosive tanks I can throw at them, making this room just a little less unbearable. With the engine now ignited and my mental state slowly deteriorating, Chapter 3 was completed and Chapter 4 was ready to get a pounding by yours truly. In Chapter 4, I met up with Hammond, who told me that I need to power up a large cannon in order to shoot some meteorites before they hit the ship. Sadly, since it is indeed a huge cannon that shoots meteorites out the sky, it requires 3 power junctions to actually function. So unfortunately, that's what I had to go fix. I was making my way to a security room when all of a sudden a giant brute came out of nowhere and tried to violate me. Now a brute is like a high school bully. He may look intimidating and he may be bigger than you, but all it takes are a few plasma shots to its weak point to put it down for good. After seeing something that one would only see on a live leak video, I was greeted to some gravity obstacles. It's nothing too hard to avoid unless you're of course me. I came across another brute but easily dispatched his soul out of its body. With the first power junction now active, I got to head to the first floor, but to get there, I had to avoid this mess of a floor and these 2 enhanced slashers. Since I did not want to use ammo, I tried to just pass by them, but got killed instantly. Luckily, the game saved where I died and was able to turn it on no problem. Now on floor 3, I got a taste of how annoying those little flesh demons can be. I turned on the last junction box only for a Hammond to tell me to go f myself and manually operate the cannon. I crossed the asteroid field and hopped on that bad boy to see if I still had my asteroid firing skills from when I was a kid. This was actually a very nice change of pace from the hell of this game. With that out of the way, I was glad to find out that Chapter 4 was almost over. I died from an unknown force and was told by Daniels to create a toxin that would eradicate the poison that was infecting the air. Chapter 4 was over and Chapter 5 was next. Chapter 5 has me pull out my PhD and start whipping up different chemicals in order to create a toxin. I met my first guardian who I instantly destroyed using my telekinesis. I made it to my first ingredient I needed for my toxin and got greeted by Dr. Mercer, who basically said that humanity ain't shit and the necromorphs are the next superior race. I called him a pussy, only for him to make me into a pussy by releasing the hunter. This regenerative bastard posed quite a threat, but luckily I made it out, only to find out that I was still with him. Now this room posed quite a threat. I mean, there was just a lot to keep track of, plus the hunter. I died many times in this room, making my death count video longer than it really needs to be. The biggest problem I had with this room was the fact that the hunter just keeps following me around. I got slapped silly many times, but keeping the hunter with no legs was the strategy to get past this room. I came across a guardian who I thought I could just walk past by, but as you can see from this footage, that just isn't the case. I found myself inside a room that contained the last material I needed for the toxin. In order to try and stop me, Dr. Mercer decided to deplete this bay from its oxygen. Now this would have been easy if it wasn't for these swarmers that are blocking my path. Even after getting past the swarmers, we got a room filled with enemies right after. All I did was blow up the swarmers and slow down these 3 amigos in order to make it out and restore my oxygen. I created my toxin and headed back to the tram, but before getting there, I had to defeat the hunter. Now he did get a few good stabs in me and a couple of slices in me, but I eventually cryogenically froze him and went on to Chapter 6. With the toxin now created, I now had the ability to fix the air in this place. Before I do that though, I must kill 8 Weezers. Now look, a lot happens in this chapter, okay? I died hella times. Killing these 8 Weezers was not easy, due to the fact that they would be surrounded by enemies. The journey to get to each one of these Weezers was a pain in my ass, to say the least. I also refused to use ammo on any of the Weezers, so I only stomped them out. So yes, it's f***ed up how I killed them, but it gets the job done and it saves me ammo. With all 8 Weezers finally dead and stomped out, I put the toxin in the filtration system, only to have it pathetically take care of only the tentacles that were blocking the door, so it didn't do shit. This led me to probably one of the worst parts of this whole challenge, fighting the Leviathan. Now I need you guys to understand how tedious this boss fight was, alright? Coming into it, I didn't really have a plan, but I noticed that his large tentacles were giving me trouble. I just couldn't seem to find a pattern to them. No matter where I would go, where I would jump to, they would always end up crushing me. I first tried to just gravity jump to the other side of the room when the tentacle hits, but after many trials and errors, I found out that it's sort of a gamble, and doing it many times I realized it just wasn't the best option. Instead, I decided to stay at the back of the room and run laps. This seemed to be the best way to avoid these tentacles. I was now able to make it to the second phase of this boss fight. This fight became literally just me running, just holding down shift the entire time until I killed it. Since I had to be careful with my ammo, I only shot once or twice when its mouth was open. This boss fight literally took forever, and I had runs where I just completely ran out of ammo, so I decided to use the canisters to my advantage to add some extra damage to the arms. If I can conserve just a little more ammo before I get to the second phase, then this boss fight might actually be possible. A big problem that I was having was eventually when I reached phase 3, I had trouble shooting his little weird, explosive balls back to his mouth because his tentacles would just block it and slap it out the way. So after again many tries and many deaths, I figured that the best thing to do is just take out his arms. If I can take out maybe 1 or at least 2 of them, then I can definitely win this fight by just throwing the balls back at him. I don't even have to use ammo. It was a very long and painful fight. The amount of times I died was incredible, but I was a determined man and I put this disgusting abomination to sleep, finally ridding me of the anxiety it was giving me. Every time I would step into the boss room, my heart had a BPM of like 300 or something, maybe even more. That's how much stress it gave me. But let me tell you something, when it was over and I defeated the boss, there's just no words to describe how good it felt. They say sex is one of the world's greatest blessings, that and food, but nothing comes even close to the feeling of jubilation I got after defeating this boss. Chapter 6 was finally done, and with that came the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching the video, and please stick around for part 2 where the real challenge begins. These first chapters, nah. They were nothing but a mere tease for what's to come next. Chapter 7 and onwards really tested me physically, emotionally, and spiritually. That's how intense it got. Please don't hesitate to leave me challenges in the comments down below, and don't forget to subscribe. It really does help me motivate myself to put out more content. With that said, I will see you guys in part 2. Peace out.